How close is Sheldon Keefe to a nervous breakdown, in your opinion?
In my opinion or your opinion? Your opinion might be a little different.
DEFCON 9 for me, buddy.
Yeah. Look, they something. I mean, at some point, eventually, we'll have to give. And nice to get the win last night. And listening to you guys a little bit earlier with respect to skill versus the physicality tied to the game. I mean, there's only so much you can do with the assets you're provided. I think he's a good coach. I just don't think the recipe that he's working with, the ingredients that he's working with, is going to look. First of all, it's going to raise some questions and some eyebrows. But I just don't think that the pieces that he's been dealt and the cards that he's been dealt, if you put those all together, it makes for some questionable hockey every once in a while, given the status that the team is at.
Yeah, what do you think the answer is? I mean, we're sitting here every day breaking it down. Obviously, this is a very heavy top-end team with some defensive problems. They've gone through their goaltending problems. If it's more of the same the rest of the year, what do you call this team? What do you want them to do at the deadline? Can they get it done in the playoffs? Like, what is your thought process on where they're at right now, and what are they going to do in the future?
They're a nice team, and that's kind of how I would categorize them. Look, there's no denying the skill set that they've got, but it's the other intangibles that have to come into play that we all know, and you guys just talked about. Those are what win you championships. So, it comes from up top, frankly. And Tree hasn't had that much of a window since coming in there. He's not going to tear things down right out of the gate. He's got to assess what he has, and he's been looking, he's been calling, he's been making inquiries and seeing what's out there, both on the defensive side of things and also in kind of the mid to bottom six. But speaking to people around the league, it hasn't sounded like the Leafs are overly eager to make a move right now, and aren't willing to give up the pieces necessary to get a Chris Tanev, for example. What that means to me is that he's continuing, and management is continuing to kind of sit back, assess what they've got, and kind of figure out if now is the time to go all in. And whether it's posturing and it's a negotiation tactic by Treliving and the staff right now, still a little bit early to tell. But based on the conversations around the league, I don't get the sense that they feel, at least up top, that this is their year. They're not a player or two away from, chasing a Stanley Cup legitimately. There are a few other cosmetic changes that are going to need to happen. And it doesn't sound like they're there yet. So for me, this is a nice team. They're a good regular season team. But you need those intangibles come playoff time that every team and every championship team over the last however umpteen number of years has had.
So I'm conflicted on this, guys, because I think the easy rebuttal is like the Florida Panthers. They were dog shit for 70 games last year. All of a sudden, they find their groove and they go all the way to the Stanley Cup final. Like, why can't the Leafs do that? And that's why I'm conflicted. Why can't a switch just flip with 15 games left and then go on a crazy run? Like, why can't they?
They don't have a Matthew Tkachuk, a Sam Bennett, Carter Verhaeghe. Radko Gudas was part of that group, so on and so on. Again, the intangible pieces. Like those balls to the wall, I'm going to do whatever the hell it takes. I'm going to run you over like a Mack truck caliber player that fits your top six and that complements your top six. They don't have that. And that's not the end all and be all. You have to have that blend. They have some of those pieces. They don't have the other pieces, not yet. And I think that the thought process was Tyler Bertuzzi was going to be one of those pieces, that Max Domi was going to be one of those pieces. And they've had good spurts throughout the season, but I don't think the physicality is there. And to me, honestly, guys, I wonder if that comes from the system, the structure, the coaching staff. Maybe they don't want that type of system in place. I don't know. I'm not specifically sure on that. They have some of the pieces to do it, but I haven't seen much in terms of what those intangible pieces that guys like Bertuzzi and Domi bring. And you brought in Ryan Reeves for a reason. They don't want to play him.
Well, I was going to say, you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, if you go back to the summertime, we knew what the holes were and what we were trying to
Yeah.
fill. And you go out there and we get Bertuzzi, we get Domi. And it's like, people blame tree leaving right now. It's like he went and did what he was asked. He put names on paper that are quality names. And then they come here and they do absolutely nothing. So he doesn't have a crystal ball. How do you predict that Tyler Bertuzzi is going to be a ghost? He's not talking. He doesn't have any confidence. He's not chirping off. He's not a rat. He's not in the fight. He's just kind of there with a blank look on his face every single night. I'm like, where is the flair in this guy? I thought that he's like one of these young guys that's coming up and being this dominant style of play, and it's just been non-existent. So how do you put that on tree living? It's in the locker room, if you ask me.
Yeah, absolutely. Like these guys came in with, you needed those types of players that have that fire under your ass kind of mentality from the drop of the puck till the final whistle. And you're right. We haven't seen that so far this season, not consistently. There've been some spurts here and there, but on a game-to-game basis, it hasn't been there. So for me, you can't predict that. That's not a tree issue. That's not Shanahan. That's not the rest of the management group. That comes down to in the room and not exclusively to the guys on the ice. I've got to think that, again, part of the coaching system that they have in place factors into how they're performing. To me, it's not, you don't just lose that overnight. You don't just go, okay, well, now I'm a part of the Leafs, so I guess I don't have to play this way. They signed you to bring that with you on a game-to-game basis, and it hasn't happened. So it's in the room, it's from the bench, and it's the same story over and over again that we've had the last umpteen seasons, several seasons now, consecutively for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Where's that fire?
It always leads back to the same conversation about the same guys they want to continue to pay. Nylander got his money and he took a vacation now. Like we talked about this earlier, a different player in the last 2.5 weeks. Maybe just a sheer coincidence. Want to get your perspective on what happens next. Obviously, not to look too far ahead. John Tavares is struggling right now, but Mitch Marner is like the next big conversation we're going to have. And that started percolating like a month and a half ago. Where do you think that direction goes?
They'll start those. I'm sure they've had loose conversations to this point. They'll start to speed those up over the off season whenever the season comes to an end. He can't, just like Tavares and anybody else with one more year left on their contract, they can't officially sign until July 1 an extension. But I think you learn from what you saw and what happened with Willie. He banked on himself. He cashed in, and I think he's going to continue. Like he hasn't just given up. He's out there. He's trying. Maybe he's a little snake bitten, and maybe he has taken his foot a little bit off the gas. But I think they've recognized that going into next season without an extension in place for at least number 16, I don't think they can do that. So I'm anticipating that those conversations to get heated once the summer rolls around, probably before July, and then see where it kind of goes from there. But it's going to be a big number. It's going to be bigger than Willie's, and that's just the nature of the beast. He's on pace for another 90-point season. That would be either hitting 90 or being on pace for it because of the shortened season for 6 consecutive seasons. It's hard to argue against the number, especially with the cap going up. But again, it'll be a big number. He's going to want more than Nylander, and the Leafs, I think, already understand that.
Do you think that this? Do you think that the Leafs, and you could say Dubas, has put them in a position contract-wise with, the guys they draft, who they bring in, what they give them after their entry-level contracts, and it just seems like we're pigeonholed right now to a whole bunch of high-end talent that's exactly the same. And it's not exactly the only thing you need to win a Stanley Cup. Yet you can't really get rid of these guys. You even if you wanted to, the no move clauses and stuff are going to put the ball in their court. Like, do you see this team being kind of handcuffed in a way when it comes to free agency and the changes that maybe need to be made in order to get to a Stanley Cup run?
Look, yes and no, Rosie. I think. Look, first of all, the Leafs are just kind of a little ahead of the trend where we're going to see 4 or 5 guys on a team making 8 figures. That's gonna continue. That's gonna climb. There are gonna be more teams that are gonna be in that boat. Some teams are a little more fortunate because, let's say, some clubs in the U.S. have no state tax. So teams like Florida, kind of, Tampa, they take advantage of it, and as they should. It's the loophole, and good for you. It is what it is. But from Toronto's perspective, look, going into the summer, they've got a decent amount of cap space to kind of play with, even with Nylander's contract kicking in next season. The cap is going to go up 5%. It's anticipated and projected to go up another 5% the year after that. So when, guys like Marner and Tavares, when their next deals kick in, the cap is projected to be around $92 million. So you're going to have some cap flexibility to make additions and make moves, including this offseason. But those guys that we're talking about that bring, like, there's no Matthew Tkachuk that's going to be available in the summer, not as an unrestricted free agent. So to go after a top tier guy and have to give him, 10 plus, that brings that physicality to it, that is that power forward with offense. Off the top of my head, I don't think there are guys that are readily available as free agents going into the summer that bring all of those elements. So you have to look at the other pieces. So to pay these four guys that much up front, I still think there's enough in the tank and in the bank for them to make the right pieces. I don't have the full free agent list in front of me right now, but there are going to be some players that are available that bring that gritty element to it that can contribute as part of a top six. So I don't think they're fully handcuffed, but I mean, with relatively limited cap space in terms of the overall spectrum, it does make some decisions a little more challenging than others because you've got to allocate that money to one or two guys versus, let's say, 4 or 5.
Yeah, spoiler alert, there's not much out there in terms of free agency, but I just wanted to ask you, like, leading up to the deadline, there's still 17 games remaining for the Leafs. As you talked about earlier, it makes the most sense to take a wait-and-see approach with this team, but are there some players you've identified that could make a lot of sense? I know Tanev's name's been out there for a couple months. Is there anybody else who you think could make sense for this team?
I think there's interest in Sean Walker in Philadelphia. Lyubushkin again out in Anaheim. Walker's an interesting one. I know they've had conversations. I know they spoke about both Walker and Nick Seeler. I think there was an offer that was presented that was rejected. I think there was an offer on the table for Chris Tanev, and I know Calgary rejected that one too. So it's not that, like, the Leafs have certainly identified pieces that they want to go after, and they're also looking up front. They're also, as I mentioned earlier, mid-6, mid to bottom 6 is another area that they want to improve upon. But you've got to be economically sound to do it. They don't have a ton of cap space. They don't have much cap space at all. So anything impactful and significant is going to not only require most likely retention, like in Tanev's situation, that Calgary would effectively have to eat half that deal. But they're also going to have to take back money, or you get a third party involved and you got to pay extra. And I don't get the sense that the Leafs are in that position right now or have that type of appetite right now to give up too much. They don't have a second round pick. Assets are limited. Teams that like some of their young players, like Minton, for example, they don't want to part with. And you're not giving that up for a rental either, especially under the circumstances in which you're playing right now. So the Leafs are looking, but I think this is a due diligence type of process. Collect all the info. All right, here's a little offer. Let's see if you'll accept it. I don't think they're serious yet.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.